Well, hi everybody. We're here with Living Well, and I'm glad you're joining me. I want to say that I'm glad to be back this week, and it's nice to see everybody and hear from you. Tonight, we're going to be talking about how certain things or certain ways of thinking keep us from being able to see things clearly. And last week at this time, I was in South Carolina, and yeah, it was great fun. So we had shrimp and grits. I had the best macaroni and cheese I've ever eaten in my life, and uh, you know, let's see. I'm trying to type, and uh, here we go. So anyway, yeah. Um, we had shrimp and grits. We had all kinds of things. And anyway, well, I want to get into this thinking about and looking at things that keep us from being able to see things clearly. And there are really six of them that I'm going to look at. Five of them I'm going to look at briefly, and one of them I want to look at length, okay? And so if you want to type any questions or comments throughout the presentation, if you're watching this live, no problem. We'd love to have questions and hear from any one of you about your thoughts regarding this. And I'm going to go ahead and see if I can give you the JPEG from this. Um, I believe I can post it. Maybe not. I'm trying to post it in uh, the section on the conversation. Do you guys see it at all? I'm Yeah, there we go. I just posted it. It's there. It's a JPEG that you can download. It has the six things. And I did get those things from a website here, and I believe that's on there. So let's look at these six things that keep us from being able to see things clearly. All right. And Donna, you're online watching. Can you see the JPEG? Can you see it? And even if, can you access it? Would you mind letting me know about that? Okay. All right. So here we go. Let's just let's just look at these five of the six, and then we're going to come back to the first one, the projecting my own insecurities onto others. That one is a tougher one to understand, at least from my perspective. And I think it's really important. So Maria says she can't open it, so we'll have to figure out what we need to do in order to get that to you. I might have to put it in the notes after I'm done presenting, and I'll go back and add an attachment to it. Yep, and Donna says she can't access it either. So, well, we'll get you the thing. I will put it, look for it in the comments, and I'll add it to this. So hopefully that will work. All right, and if nothing else, um, you can email Maria at freshhope.us, Maria at freshhope.us, and she can send it to you. So, five of the six things that keep us from being able to see things clearly, to understand clearly what's going on, and to have clear thinking about things. One of them is this: when we desperately hold on to our plans. You know, we we have our set plans, our things that we want to have happen and that we want to see going on, and we can easily cling on to those plans, so much so that it just keeps us from being able to really move forward. And it clouds everything, because sometimes you can hold on to your plans so tightly that you actually believe they're coming to fruition, and you're not seeing the reality of what is. And so it can keep you from seeing things clearly. Now, the third one is still holding on to the past. When you hold on and hold on and hold on to your past, it will just keep you from being in the moment. It will keep you from literally being able to know exactly what's going on in the present. And when you're still holding on to the past, whether it's a good past or a harmful past or a painful past, no matter what, it's keeping you from the present, and it's keeping you from being able to move forward into the future, because usually it's in the present time, and when we're present, we are starting to plan what's next, what's next. But if you're constantly holding on to the past, that's like trying to drive up a mountaintop, or better yet, drive down a mountaintop by looking in your rear view mirror the entire time. You can't get there. You gotta let go of the past in order to move forward. Well, let's take the fourth one, and that is when you have self-limiting beliefs. In other words, you you just don't believe certain things, that you can do certain things. You know what? I found if I don't think I can do something, I won't be able to do it. I can tell you, I have one self-limiting belief goes way back to elementary school, and that is I don't like heights, and I cannot, have not, and will not ever attempt to jump off of a high diving board. I just don't want to do it, and I don't think I can. So you know what? If I have that self-limiting belief, I, in fact, won't do it. If you believe you can't move forward, you won't be able to move forward. You won't actually even attempt it. And so self-limiting beliefs really can hold us back, and they can really cloud things for us and make it so that we can't really understand what's going on. It will clog up and fog up and mess up your thinking. All right. So the fifth one is the need for constant validation. That's when we constantly have to hear from somebody, you're doing well, or you can do this, or you can't do that. And that need for constant validation easily comes and happens to us when we have a low self-esteem to begin with. And needing that constant validation can really interrupt our understanding of what's going on in the present, and it can keep us from being able to see things and understand things clearly. So the last one is the fear of uncertainty. Let's be honest, most of life is uncertain. We think life is real predictable, but it's really not. Life is pretty unpredictable. Certainly, there are things that we think we can predict. I think the last several years with the pandemic has proven it to many of us that life is unpredictable. And what we thought wouldn't happen or couldn't happen, it can happen. And, Jesus himself said he did not know the end time. That only the Father knew that. He chose to not know that on earth in his limited powers as completely human and completely God at the same time. Well, anyway, my point is that the world could end tomorrow morning. There could be something very tragic just around the corner. We don't know. Life is uncertain, and there's a lot of risks that we take in life. I heard recently that, for instance, people can get real uptight about the mass shootings that have happened here in the United States, and they're horrible, no doubt about it. But that you're more likely to have a car accident than you are ever going to be being shot for instance. And yet the news and all that uncertainty and all of that gets planted in our heads. It's the same way with COVID, the risk of COVID in today's world versus getting the flu or the influenza or being in a car accident or whatever. Um, some people are afraid of flying, for instance. They're afraid of the uncertainty. Um, but the reality is that if you drive to the airport, you've taken the greatest risk already of the trip that you're going on, which includes flying, driving to the airport, driving away from the airport, etc. So, anyway, let's go back to the number one thing, and that is projecting our own securities onto others. These are things that this in particular stops us from seeing clearly. And that is when we project our own insecurities on others. I read not long ago that this is kind of like projecting onto other people is comparable to when, for instance, you dump your trash in the middle of somebody else's living room and then you get mad at them because they're sloppy and they're not, they're messy. And instead of taking responsibility for your own emotional clutter, you make it someone else's emotional clutter. Projection is often a calling for self reflection and setting healthy boundaries for yourself. So I'm going to read a little bit from the happinessclinic.org, and they talk about understanding projection. And projection is an unconscious defense mechanism, and it stems from the ego. In projection, you take an unacceptable part of yourself, such as your feelings, thoughts, tendencies, and fears, disown it, and place it onto someone else. And projections contain our blind spots. They're usually things that maybe we don't either know about ourselves or we won't accept about ourselves. And everybody has this at some point or another. Sometimes you know you're doing it. Most of the time, you don't know that you're doing it. Now, when we do that, it clouds our vision, it skews our perception of reality, and it makes it hard for us to see the situation for what it is, and it morphs the person or the situation into something they are not or the situation is not. And when you engage in projection, you become susceptible to self-victimization and blaming other people for something you need to address within yourself. To me, projection is projecting your insecurities onto others is a kind of a complicated thing because, for instance, common projections might be fear and anxiety. So you see the other person as being fearful and anxious, and you're projecting that onto them, and you're blaming them, and you're accusing them, when in fact those are your feelings, but you're seeing it and projecting it onto them. Childhood pain, we sometimes project that onto others. Suppressed fantasies, repressed desires, parts of ourselves that we don't understand, we might project onto other people. Expectations, judgment, unfinished business, pent up emotions, core beliefs. And like I said, it's like dumping your clutter, your trash into somebody else's living room and then hating them for being messy and calling them out for it when in fact it's not happening. Now, according to this little bit of research that I've done on this, you have to be you have to be concerned about other people's projections also. And so you don't want to gaslight yourself. So it's important to determine when you're projecting. It's essential to take note of other people's projections onto you when they think they know what you're feeling, or they say you've got trauma you haven't worked through or whatever, and you realize, no, I think you're projecting that onto me. So there are times when you might encounter manipulation, rage, disrespect, and other boundary violations that tell you a lot more about the other person than they do about you, even though they are dumping their clutter in your living room and claiming it's you who's messy, okay? And in these situations, your response is still your responsibility, whether that includes practicing non involvement communication or setting a boundary by saying, we see this differently. I do not believe that's an accurate perception of me or whatever, or removing yourself from the situation. But whatever you do, don't gaslight yourself. In other words, bit by bit, start believing it and believing, I am a messy person and look at how messy my living room is, so to speak. Okay, using that same word analogy. So it's suggested that when you have problems with projection, especially projecting your own securities onto other people and your own issues onto other people, that you really do a three-step exploration of it. So, step one is to notice if you're exhibiting these symptoms of projection. So if you're feeling overly hurt, defensive, or sensitive about something someone has said or done, you may be projecting. Or allowing someone to push your buttons and get under your skin in a way that other people do not get under your skin. Or feeling highly reactive and quick to blame the other person or someone else for something. And then difficulty being objective, getting perspective, or standing in another person's shoes, noticing the situation or your reactivity is a recurring pattern when you're with somebody. Those are all symptoms of, if you will, signs of the fact that you just very well might be projecting your own insecurities onto someone else. So then the second step is to just be honest about it. We all do it. It's a coping mechanism. It's a defense mechanism that we have, and it just goes awry on us. So you have to be honest with yourself and ask yourself these questions, and you might even write down the answers. What part of my past is this person triggering? Sometimes we run into people that might remind us of our father or our mother or somebody from our past that has hurt us. Maybe it's an ex or whatever it might be. And then where does this send me on an emotional level? What's happening to me on the emotional level when I get triggered? And then what types of stories am I telling myself about this person or this situation? Many times just because we feel something, then we can end up believing that we know the story, but we're not telling ourselves the truth. We're not thinking about it enough. And, I always say, don't believe everything you think, because it's not always true. So sometimes you have to stop and really think about those things. What does this person or this situation remind me of? And in what ways do I act like this person? Is there any area in my life where I also show up in this way, this way that I'm upset with or whatever? And in what ways do I not act like this person? And why is that? Am I afraid I might be like the person who's triggering me, or that others might think of me in this way? If yes, what's the core of this fear? So, what do I need to do to take care of myself right now? How can I self-soothe and calm down and not be triggered by it? How can I be compassionate while also setting a healthy boundary with the person or the situation? And then, implementing boundaries and reclaiming your power means that you've got to be able to calm yourself down, and reflect and do those kinds of things. Um, for a long time, I have projected my insecurities onto other people easily, and a lot of it was shame based for me. It was just simply that I couldn't be wrong, or I couldn't be this, or I couldn't be that. And unknowingly, part of a way to blame other people was to maybe the very thing I had done or thought I was projecting onto them as having thought or done. And, the bottom line is the only person that was really hurting was me. And sooner or later, if you're constantly projecting your own insecurities onto somebody else, and they start setting boundaries and saying, "Whoa, whoa, 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 that's on you. That's not, you're projecting that onto me." If they, so to speak, say, "You brought your clutter, and now you're backing your truck up into my clean living room, and you're trying to dump your stuff out on me and blame me for it." When they start calling you out, then you really do have to kind of stop and say to yourself, why am I doing that? Isn't it interesting how in relationships, many times we will want to be so right, and we're so shame based that we don't want anybody to know our weaknesses or our brokenness, or we don't want to take responsibility for the mistakes we've made or the things that we've done or are doing. And we do so at the peril of the relationship ending, just basically being over, because we keep projecting onto somebody and we keep blaming them for what's going on in us. And so, I find it very interesting. I I think I've told this story before, but some of you might not have heard it. Years ago, I took a 40-hour course on for peer support specialist here in Omaha, Nebraska, and it was 40 hours, and so each day you came, it was 5 days of training, and each day I came, I was sitting by somebody different, and nobody else was getting moved around. And I found out that I was triggering, people were being triggered by me, and they were trying to figure out who to sit me by that wouldn't be triggered. And I thought, the whole idea that I wasn't purposely trying to trigger anybody, but it's interesting how when people think you're triggering them, what they're not realizing is that many times they're projecting their own insecurities, their own issues onto you, and then they blame you for triggering. And finally, I said to somebody in the class, I said, I in order for me to be responsible for triggering you would mean I'd have to know that was your button, that was your hot button, and I was purposely doing it. I'm not purposely doing anything. I don't know you. So where's your responsibility in taking responsibility for being triggered? Do you see what I'm saying? All of this has to do with projection. And it would have been easy for me at that point to say, oh, something I'm doing wrong is triggering this person. And because of that, I could develop, shame about that, or be gaslighting myself, so to speak. So it's really important. Now, I don't know about you guys. You can type it into the comment section there. Do you understand this whole idea of, that, projecting our insecurities on others? Maybe it's more complicated to me than it is to you, but does it make sense to you that how when those insecurities get projected onto other people, that it keeps you from seeing things clearly? Makes sense? Anybody got any questions or comments? Please type them in. I'd love to hear them and love to share them with the group. Um, so, again, the six are projecting my own insecurities onto others, desperately holding on to my plans even when the plans have already fallen through or are not going to happen, still holding on to the past, good or bad, and unable to live in the present, in the present, or make plans for the future. It'll keep me from seeing things clearly. Self-limiting beliefs. If I believe I can't, I won't. And the need for constant validation. If you need constant validation, most of us don't get enough validation. And then if we really need more than the average Joe, definitely it's going to keep us from seeing things clearly. We're going to think, oh, I'm no good. I can't do this. I can't do that. And then the fear of uncertainty, just knowing that we cannot be certain in this world. So unless you all fell asleep, I don't see anybody's got any comments or anything like that. Next week, I'm not going to be here in Nebraska. I'm going to be out in Las Vegas. My son and his wife and their son live out there, and we're going to be taking our grandson home next Thursday. But I will be here at 7:30 Central Time, or 7 o'clock Central Time, and I have a huge announcement for you. And I hope that you'll join me and be part of the fun as we make a very big announcement and something that I think you'll all be interested in. And again, for living well, our goal is to always help you and myself to live well in spite of a mental health diagnosis. And in doing so, we have to clear up things like what's keeping us from seeing things clearly. And so I hope you'll join me again next week. And I will attempt to put this little picture thing I was using tonight, I will attempt to put it in the comment section on Facebook so you can download it and look at it more yourself. And so that's it for this week. And thanks so much for being here this evening. I really appreciate you guys being here live with me. And I know that many of you use this for your groups. And if you're using this in your group, God bless your group. And talk with one another about this and when you've projected and knowing that you've been projecting. And join me next week. Big announcement. Okay? God bless you. Bye.